Hey, good people, how you doing? Another edition of the Armchair Analysts. Michael Kwambo on this side, and joining me as always, Kibui. But how you doing, Kibui?
Doing all right. We're freezing down here in Texas, but we're gonna make it through till we get some sun this weekend.
All right, man. The weather on this side is it needs to decide because one day there's snow, the next there's rain, and then there's sun. It's like they're playing, they're playing a game of musical chairs. So you don't know how to dress up. So in the car, you've got everything from boots to a jacket to probably even shorts because just can't tell what's gonna happen.
It sounds like Texas. We usually say like Texas weather in the course of a couple of days is like playing the lottery.
Oh
You got
yeah.
a 21, a 7, a 65. It's all in there in a couple of days. So there you go.
Oh,
Sounds
and
like
by the way, you've got a nice shirt on.
yeah, man. This is the old samurai. This is a retro. It's not a retro, but it's from about 6 or 7 years back. Part of my collection. Part of the things that one of the things I collect is rugby jerseys. So you'll be seeing more of these.
Great, great. And it's good that it's a Kenyan jersey. Brings us to our first order of business on this edition of the Armchair Analysts. The Shuja squad was named for the Vancouver leg of the World Series, actually happening this weekend. And the biggest inclusion there, Jean Kubu. I think a long overdue inclusion. And then he's also joined by youngster Jackson Siketa. And then the rest of the team, that we have the likes of Asati or William Mwanji, you name it, Patrick Odongo, the regulars are there. But
Yeah.
we know the regulars. Your take on Jone Kubu making Shuja finally at the age of 36, notwithstanding.
Well, we don't know if he's really 36 because I've heard Pacific Islanders say that they celebrate their first birthday when they're 7. So who knows? Maybe he's 42 or 43. But he's been on the Kenyan scene for a long time and, played a lot of 15s rugby for the country. He's been a stalwart at his club. He's very mercurial. He's a great playmaker. He knows when to vary his kicking with his running. It'll be interesting to see how much he'll have in his legs, considering it's his first international tournament. But he's got the skills, and to break into a squad that's doing pretty well, he's got to be ready for it and hungry. So I don't know anything about the Siketa, so you'll tell us about him.
Yeah, but before I get to Siketa, still
Yeah.
with Jone Kubu, apart from the skills, he's also got the temperament because he's done unbelievable things with the team. And for the younger viewers, they probably did not see Sami Kakame in action. I think we've not had anybody with that kind of temperament in terms of just taking the game by the scruff of its neck. We've seen him do that time and again for Cabras Sugar in the local 7s and 15s circuit. We saw him do that for Kenya, particularly in the 2023 Elgon Cup, the return leg in Kisumu.
Hmm.
The Ugandans had won the first leg in Kampala by 21 points to 20. And
Yeah.
then the second leg in Kisumu was tight, and it was all down to a moment of brilliance from Jone Kubu, splitting the defense, scoring under the post. The Ugandans, he is the man that the Ugandans love to hate. They are in reverence of him.
Yeah.
I've seen him play locally, like you said, and it's good that he finally gets his call up. Now, Jackson Siketa, he
Hmm.
is a youngster. He's coming up. He was a part of the Kenya under 20s who won the Rugby Africa under 20 championship last year in Zimbabwe. Now,
Okay.
this guy, he plays at fullback. He gives you options. He's a halfback, so he can play 10, 9. He can even play at fullback. And he reminds me a lot of Lavina Sego in terms of his ability to spot the gap, his ability to punish his opponents with the territorial kicks, and then also reminds me of Darwin Mukidza because of his languid running style. He
Mm.
passes past his defenders, and you wonder, is this guy like gliding past me or something? And also been one of the players who is still being blooded into Cabras Sugar. It's good to see him get a chance with the Kenya
Yeah.
Sevens at the age of 2021. This is what we'd like to see. And I
Yeah.
do feel that, of course, he's going to be used sparingly in Vancouver, but I feel that being in the environment, getting to travel, hopefully is the start of a great rugby journey for him in the national colors.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need that one opportunity, even if it's at the end of the game, to make a big play. whether it's like a big defensive play or a huge run. And the hope is that he'll get minutes. There are less games in the series as than they were previous years, but hopefully he'll get a chance to show his wares.
Yeah. Now, Shuja is in a pool that has Argentina, France, and Great Britain.
Yeah.
And Kevin Wambua, in his media duties after the Perth tour, actually said that Shuja are targeting Great Britain. It's very
Yes.
simple. Shuja are in ninth position.
Yeah.
Great Britain are in eighth. And once you are in the top eight, you are safe from the relegation playoff. And I do feel that it is a realistic target instead of like the kind of statements we hear from our politicians saying, hey, nitawaletea maendeleo hapa barabara ya lami within 2 days, and then it doesn't happen after 2 years. Let's not even go 20 years. I think it's being
Yeah.
realistic because
Yeah.
anybody else would say, we want to win the series and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
for him, it's obviously targeting top eight. And who's the weakest link there? It is Great Britain. They are in the same pool with Shuja, and definitely that is an opportunity for Kevin Wambua and his Chargers to go for the kill.
Yeah, the eighth spot is where we want to be by the end of the season. I think the gap has already kind of stretched to where like seventh is almost a bit too far out there. But I think a semifinal finish kind of puts us in good standing. We've proven that we can keep with Argentina and the very best, but the Great Britain game is a must win. That's going to be the last game of the on day one, right? And so I like the fact that we're actually taking Argentina on first and get that out the way. And you know what? If we can get a win in that first game, then there's all to play for that semifinal berth. But all costs, we have to beat Great Britain because we have to keep them close to us. And then at some point, the hope is we can overhaul them before the end of the season.
Yeah, and thankfully, Shuja have already pulled one over Great Britain. Was it in Cape Town?
It
If
was in
I'm
Cape
not
Town,
wrong.
yes.
Yeah, and it was a comprehensive win for that matter.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Brits will not be taking that lying down because I am the kind of person who holds the view that whatever happened in the past is in the past, and you're taking every new game as it comes. And
Yeah.
but I do feel that psychological advantage, the fact that also the Shuja squad remains largely unchanged, save for
Yes.
those two players who are coming through, gives them the momentum, gives them the chemistry, gives them everything they need in terms
Mhm.
of getting that all-important result against Great Britain. And then between France and Argentina, one of those teams is there for the taking. The reason I say this is that
Yeah.
if you looked at Shuja in Australia, it was inches, I mean, away from putting up good performances. They were not embarrassed against Fiji, against New
No.
Zealand, not embarrassed against Uruguay. They were just unlucky. And I think it's now time to take the game by the scruff of the neck, and probably that is where
Yeah.
Johnny Kubu comes in.
I think, and that last gasp attempt for the try, it was like this close, right?
Yeah.
A touchdown. I would have liked to have seen them hold the ball in hand, but I like the bravery as well. So I'm banking on them stealing a game against France and stealing against Great Britain to push to the semifinal. So that's my juju prediction for the weekend. For day
Okay,
one.
yeah, I'm looking for obviously the win against Great Britain, and
Yeah,
yeah, again, like you, also looking at France. Not forgetting that France are the defending Olympic champions. But
yeah,
that's notwithstanding, anything. The beauty of sevens is that it's open, and anybody can show up for that. And looking at Shuja making the last eight, and I think from there I'll be happy if they make the semis. Well and good, but ideally a cup quarter final should be within their reach in Vancouver.
I'm all for it. I fully believe that this side can. It's not even like huge upsets, right? At this point, it is fine margins. But if they go and they pick off like a couple of games, and they'll everybody would be impressed, but you're not going to be shocked. So I'm looking for them to make some noise this weekend.
Great. Now, last weekend we had Super Rugby kicking off, and
Yeah.
much to the excitement of many guys, I actually purposed to catch some games, but the body is not quite what it used to be. There's too many sports that you want to watch, but there's too little energy to stay awake. To cut a long story short, I missed the action. So
Yeah.
you, as a guy who had the privilege, maybe you can take us through what you saw from round one, and I can chime in with some of my opinions that have come obviously after reading the reviews from round one of Super Rugby.
So unfortunately, it's now behind a paywall. But for those of you that want to spend $30 a month, you can catch it. There were a lot of tight games all weekend, and it's the New Zealand sides have been head and shoulders above the rest of the field. So the Aussie sides, and then Pacifica, Moana Pacifica, and then the Fiji and Drua. And so it was the very first game of the weekend. We had the Crusaders and the Hurricanes in an absolute thrill of a game, and looks like the Crusaders are back. They were down in the first game in that first half, but they came back in the second half to control of the game. They look like they have a good, hungry young squad, and they're disciplined and well coached. So I think that they're probably going to be early favorites, along with the Hurricanes who stayed with them, and then you'll have your Chiefs who were led by Damien McKenzie, the mercurial Damien McKenzie. So he had a great showing in that game. I caught some highlights for the Brumbies, who survived in Fiji. A late winner there. Same thing for the Force, who scored at the very end of their game. These are very high scoring games. So for the Australian sides to ship 30, 40 plus points against Fiji and Moana shows that they're probably not going to be as competitive against the top tier of the New Zealand sides. But then the Waratahs went and they snuck a win against the Highlanders, who are probably one of the weaker New Zealand sides. So week match two is going to be interesting, because we're going to get to see some of those trans-Tasman games. Actually, no, there's only one game where the Reds take on Moana. It looks like it's going to be all New Zealand and then all Australia. Then the week after, we're going to get some trans-Tasman games. So I don't really think we're going to get a real handle on where the teams rank until match week 3. But a lot of good rugby, running rugby. It's the most attractive rugby there is. Not as technical in the breakdown as maybe Premiership rugby, but this is, for me, the best rugby to watch for flowing game.
Yeah, and there's a guy that everybody's talking about after round one, and that is Joseph Aukuso Suali, making his debut for the Waratahs, and getting rave reviews.
Yeah.
There's thoughts about him being fielded in the long term in midfield, both for the Tars and for the Wallabies. What do you think of this guy's transition, first of all, from rugby league to rugby union, and the impact he had on week one for the Tars?
He's a natural footballer, like they say. Much like Folau's transition when he made it like over 10 years ago. He's a lanky guy. He hits hard. He carries well. He can offload in the carry. I think he played at 13 for the Wallabies, and I think that's going to be his position, either there or a fullback. I'd rather see him not play at fullback, but he's going to be a big part of their plans for the Lions this season. He's electric. He runs those seams real hard. You talk about ghosting, where you just hit the seam and then you just hold your line, you show the ball, hold the line, and then you're fast enough to kind of just like curve past your outside center. He has that in him. And so I think he's been a big ticket for Australian rugby. The fans are coming out to see him. They're drumming up interest. And there's 2 or 3 like big name league converts who are thinking of following him. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens.
Yeah, so we obviously, excuse me, must be the weather. We're obviously looking at the fixtures that are going to come up in round two.
Yeah.
Definitely going to make for great rugby action. Now, let's shift to the Six Nations. Back after a break, and jokingly, somebody said that these guys broke for Valentine's Day weekend to be with, to be with their significant others. But they're back now. I have this
Everybody
unpopular
needs love, Mike. Everybody needs love.
needs love, and then there's also this unpopular opinion that Northern Hemisphere rugby is soft. Anyway, you didn't hear it from me. it's back now with the action. We have the Calcutta Cup. We've got France. We've got Ireland and Wales, France and Italy. Interesting matchups. But before that, ever since the last time we did the Armchair Analyst,
Yeah,
Wales have a new coach. Gatland is gone.
we talked about it. We didn't know if he was going to last another game. He lasted maybe a game longer than we thought he would. But I think his time was done. He left and he came back, and he left and he came back, and I think he just didn't have the. He had a generational squad for a long time, and that squad is completely gone now. And now it's a bunch of young guys, and they're trying to figure it out. They don't have any leaders on that side, really, right? So he's just. I think he's a victim of the depth in the Welsh Union, and so I think it's going to be another tough weekend for Wales. What are your thoughts on their game with Ireland? They're
Oh
hosting it.
man,
What are your
They-
thoughts?
yeah, they're hosting it, but they can't catch a break. They needed to win the game against Italy. That was the game to determine the wooden spoonists in the Six Nations. They've lost that game. It's a
Convincing.
wrap for them. Yeah, they lost it. And then Ireland, even with a depleted squad because they have three players out through injury, still have too much over the Welsh in terms of just like the personnel, in terms of form as well. You're playing a team that's lost 14 on the bounce. It's very likely they'll lose their 15th. Confidence is low. They're figuring things out under a new coach. This is Ireland's game to lose, really.
What do you think would be a good performance by Wales? Where expectation is that they're going to lose. What
Yeah,
do you think would be a good performance for them, like score
a good perform
wise and all that?
score-wise, restricting the Irish to two scores.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a good performance for them. And then still on the matter of Wales, just looking at some of the press reports, Warren Gatland has come out to say that he quit also because of the growing criticism around the performances.
Ah, shut up.
Um,
You should shut up.
he's
No.
actually saying that after just listen to this. This is what he said in the Daily Telegraph, and he said
Uh-huh.
that before the Italy game, he had more or less made up his mind. This is what he says, quote unquote. It was always a must-win game. The Friday or the Saturday before the game, I made sort of a decision without thinking too much about it. If we didn't win that game, then I'd have to seriously consider my position. It would be the best time and the best thing for everyone to walk away. Do you think he's covering his tracks or being real?
Man, just go away. Just
Yeah.
go away. You went to Super Rugby. You had one of the best squads, and you couldn't get them to click. Maybe it's time for him to retire. I
Absolutely.
I think he paints himself in a very bitter light by why even come out make the press release, right? Just say, what, I think that I've taken this side as far as I possibly can. Maybe I'm just not getting the best out of the young lads. And thank you, Wales Rugby, for trusting me for 20 plus years or whatever. And I wish the union the best. Don't
Yeah.
come here with your, just stop it. You're a
Yeah.
grown man. You're 60 years old.
61 actually. He
Stop.
that's the benefit of research. I mean, he should have just walked away,
Yeah.
gone into the sunset, probably taken up a consultant's role because it would have been easier that way. But to each his own. And also, he's not Eddie Jones.
He's not as bad as Eddie Jones, so I'll give him
Yeah.
that much. But I
Yeah.
think he shouldn't have come back this time. I think he thought he was going to come and somehow magic.
Wow.
So I feel bad for Welsh Rugby, but sometimes you just have to rip the band-aid off and just start over. It's going to be a rough 2 years for them. Hopefully they'll get enough young players and depth and find a leader at the 9-10 axis. Without leaders in the 9-10 axis, they've got some young leaders in the pack. Their top hooker right now is injured. Dewey Lake is a fantastic hooker. He's a leader in that front row. Jack Morgan, Toby Faletau probably has a couple of seasons left to kind of help transition. But if they find a couple of key players, about 2 or 3 seasons, they could back to being a competitive side where they can push for third or fourth in the Six Nations. But the next 2 years are going to be painful, very painful for Welsh rugby. So
Yeah, but yeah, it's gonna be painful. But in between, they also need to start winning some games. I mean, it's gonna be a really unwanted record, regardless of who takes over. They've already lost 14, heading on to 15.
they're probably going to lose a whole bunch more. Probably, I mean, even a game with like Fiji or like Georgia. I'm I'm probably picking Georgia over Wales right now. They're a cohesive unit. Portugal might run them hard, which is embarrassing because those are tier two nations. So
And they're actually pushing for that case. It's even good we're having this conversation. They're
yeah,
pushing for that case to have the winner of the Rugby Europe Championship play
yeah,
against the, not really play, but actually take the place. Anyway, I can't remember the details, but have them
yeah.
considered for the Six Nations, whereby you probably play a playoff and somebody goes up. There needs to be promotion and relegation. That's the long and short of that story.
Yeah, there'll be a massive uproar from the Welsh, but I mean the results are ugly. At some point, you have to be held accountable, right?
Yeah. Now, England and Scotland meet in the
Mhm.
Calcutta Cup, which is quite that internal rivalry in the Six Nations. And I have an interesting story to tell, not about the Calcutta Cup, but about the Elgon Cup.
Mhm.
And this was a time, must have been 2017,
Mhm.
when it was Kenya and Uganda were playing in the Rugby Africa Cup. And I mean, we call the fixture the Elgon Cup, based on all these other derbies around the world. We'll move away to soccer and say that, we've got the El Clasico between Real Madrid and Barcelona. In
Mhm.
Kenya, we have the Mashemeji derby between AFC Leopards and Gor Mahia. We have the Calcutta Cup. Now, the mention
That's the
of
Drum
the
Road Derby,
yes. How can we forget that?
my
And it's
guy.
interesting. The two guys here who've been on different spectrums of that Gongong Road derby. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the reason I was saying that is because in 2017 or thereabouts, it was part of the Rugby Africa competition. Obviously, there was the leg that was not part of the competition. And then obviously, because you're trying to save money, cut down on logistics, you include the Rugby Africa fixture as part of the Elgon Cup.
Mhm.
And in your publicity, you're referring to it as the Elgon Cup. Now, this really irritated the then ruling class of Rugby Africa, led by Aziz Bugja, the North Africans,
Mhm.
who actually said, no, you must refer to this fixture as a Rugby Africa Cup. And you
Mhm.
try to explain to them, guys, look, it's Rugby Africa Cup, but there's an internal rivalry as well.
Mhm.
And so they threatened to find the union.
There's no
Yeah,
money.
that's the whole point. And when they threatened the fine, it was a measly sum. And I remember telling the CEO then, Ron Bukusi, who laughed it off and even said that the organizing expenses for that particular game were even
Mhm.
more than the sum that these guys are threatening to cut off. That was just that story about the way some fixtures have got enduring stories around them. But
Okay.
now back to it. England and Scotland meet at
Calcutta
Twickenham on
Cup.
Saturday. Yeah, the Calcutta Cup.
Yeah. England have already put out their squad.
Yeah.
I think I like the organization in their squad this season. They've put out their squad early, so barring a late scratch, they now have a proper number eight starting at eight. They have a proper seven in Ben Earl, and then Curry shifts to the blind side, and they have a 6-2 split on the bench. So they're coming to mash up. They're literally coming to mash up Scotland, right? I think it's going to be a very good game for England. It's at the Allianz, right? It's at Twickenham.
Twickenham. We know it as Twickenham.
I know. Yeah. So now they rebranded as Allianz, but yes, it's going to be at Twickenham. So they're going to be singing their "Swing Low" and "Sweet Chariot," and I think we're going to be looking at a 18 to 20 point plus win for England, which puts them in the driving seat for the rest of the season. So
Yeah, I concur with you. And also for Scotland, remember they're sweating on the fitness of Finn Russell.
Yeah,
got caught up in that clash of heads during that disappointing result against Ireland. Remember, I texted you about it and said,
yeah,
really expected that to be a toe to toe encounter. And after
yeah.
55 minutes, I was like, should I really continue watching this game?
Losing Darcy Graham is also a very he's very underrated, right?
Yeah.
I think he's a Lions bolter too because he's not big, but he does all the basics that a winger does very well. He covers very well. It's very rare that he'll give up a 50-22. He's very good in the tight. He supports his centers. So it's not just losing Finn Russell. Losing Darcy Graham is huge because he may not be the specimen that Duhan van der Merwe is, but he gives that team so much go forward and he scores tries. So I think Scotland, even if Finn Russell comes back, so forget about Finn Russell. Even if they start Blair Kinghorn at 10, I still think that this England side is now finding some form. So regardless, I think it's going to be at least a 2 to 3 plus score for difference for them at home.
Yeah, and it'll be another season of Scotland failing to live up to the expectations. Now, Italy, France, I think it's a rather straightforward fixture.
Yeah.
Italy obviously expected to give some resistance, but I do feel the French have too much quality, too much experience for the Italians, and 2 to 3 score result over the Italians.
Do you think they'll go with another like bomb squad like the South Africans do with their bench split?
It's possible. I know Fabien Galtier has hinted at it heavily, even threatening to unleash a 7-1 split. So it's very possible. So let's see how that works out.
Yeah, I think if Roman Tamak comes back, him and Dupont just have this chemistry, and this will be a very tough game for the Azuri at home. I think another 25 plus win for France to make it a three-way tie, or at least three teams at the top with Ireland, England, and France as the teams to watch. Ireland still trying to take another Six Nations to make it three in a row, but we'll see. I think France wins that one comfortably. I think the top squads will all win by 20 plus points this weekend. So that's my prediction for the weekend.
Yeah, I concur with you pretty much because of the quality of the opposition. Now,
Yeah.
just going back to the split, I'm probably old school. I'm probably a rugby purist. When did things change to the extent where we're doing the 6-2, the 7-1? Yes, I do understand that the forwards have got a vital role to play, but I also feel that backs are quite influential, and I think you need to have a healthy split. And if you are mixing it up, at least get some utility players who can cover both positions.
It's because of South Africa. It's plain and simple. South Africa just got to the point where they bullied the rest of the world, and now the world has to kind of step up. There are only 3 or 4 countries that can match them with that. It's New Zealand, it's England, I think it's France and Ireland. Those are the only countries that can match what South Africa bring. You look at it, say someone like Quagga Smith. Quagga Smith plays eighth man. He can play 6 and 7, but he can also play 11, 14, 12, and 13 because he's played the sevens game at such a high level. Um, and you look at England. Maybe Ben Earl is the one guy who could kind of fill that role. Maybe Jack Willis. You look at France. Antoine Dupont can probably play flanker, and he can probably move into he can move into the pack. He can move to 10. So there's going to be a need for some versatility. And if you're a coach and the other team has like a 7-2, a 7-1, or a 6-2 split, then maybe what we need to do is run them absolutely ragged. Just that's the only way you can counter it. Is like you get some possession and then you just switch them side to side. You make them run side to side and make those guys just hands on their hips. That's the only way you can counter it, right?
Or alternatively, you play in La Paz, the capital of Bolivia. It's some 3,000 meters above sea level.
I don't know. Have you played at altitude?
Yes,
I'm
I
talking
have.
about like proper altitude.
Yes, I have. And you make one run and you're like, I have no gas.
So when you can, you should go for the Aspen Rugger Fest every September. And let me tell you, the first run that you make, your hands go up here immediately. You don't know why, but you go up here and then your eyes become big. Everybody's
Yeah,
eyes become big because you're looking for oxygen and it
and it's
sucks.
not there. You've expended everything.
It's done. It's over.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've got a lot of great rugby to watch this weekend. There's also some URC rugby. There's also the Premier League for us guys who follow both football and rugby.
Yes, there is. And then back home, there is the Kenya Cup.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. I think the game of the week, not I think, the game of the weekend is KCB versus Menengai Oilers.
Yeah.
It's a game that could go either way. Both teams are unbeaten after 8 rounds of action. Both have bonus point wins. KCB are hosting the Oilers. It's not to say that they have home ground advantage because the Oilers have recently been running KCB rugged. In
Mm.
fact, in 2022, they ended KCB's reign as Kenya Cup champs. And it's pretty open. KCB with a new coaching staff, a lot of transition in their playing personnel. Same for the Oilers. It would be interesting to see how that game goes. And then there's also a relegation dogfight, the likes of Impala facing off against Mwamba, Strathmore Leos versus Nakuru.
Yeah. Things
It's
are tight.
things are tight. Keeping tabs on that, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation about that in another episode.
Yeah, it's just Kenyan rugby. There's the haves and have-nots in Kenya Cup. There's the three sides at the top. Cabras, Oilers, and KCB. Then there's like I think Nondis and Queens, and then there's the rest. So it's a vast gap. But yeah, we can talk about that in detail as we go deeper into the season.
Yeah, well, it's been great sitting here on the
Yeah,
armchair. Thanks for your time.
yeah. Appreciate you having me. And as always, we'll catch up after the weekend and see if we knew what we were talking about.
Yeah, and if we don't, I mean,
It's
we're in
okay.
the process, in the process of dispensing whatever it is we don't know about, and
It's
picking
okay.
up what we know.
Exactly. Appreciate you
Yeah,
having me on, Mike.
thanks.
Till next time, guys.